My name is Andrew Syrios. I'm the acquisition manager for Stewardship Properties in Kansas City. I'm also the project manager. And we're going to talk about acquisition, the first step in buy and hold. First thing you need to do. So, first and foremost, we're going to have story time. So gather around the campfire, everybody. Last time we talked about how real estate is an inefficient market and the stock market is an efficient market. If anyone here still has delusions of grandeur about the stock market, let me dissuade you. This comes from Daniel Kahneman's great book. Anyone who's interested in psychology should definitely read it. It's called Thinking Fast and Slow. But he had a chance to analyze how well some investment advisors did for a stock firm. And here's what he says. I asked for some data to prepare my presentation and was granted a small treasure, a spreadsheet summarizing the investment outcomes of some 25 anonymous wealth advisors for each of 8 consecutive years. Each advisor's score for each year was his main determinant of his year-end bonus. It was a simple matter to rank the advisors by the performance in each year and to determine whether there were persistent differences in skill among them and whether the same advisors consistently achieved better returns for their clients year after year. To answer the question, I computed correlation coefficients between the rankings in each pair of years, year 1 with year 2, year 1 with year 3, and so on up to year 7 with year 8. That yielded 28 correlation coefficients, 1 for each pair of years. I knew the theory and was prepared to find weak evidence of persistence of skill. Still, I was surprised to find that the average of the 28 correlations was 0.01. And the same correlations can be found for mutual funds too. Playing the stock market is gambling. It's an efficient market, the data's out there. It's very, very challenging to find any sort of good deal. But the real estate market is inefficient. There's plenty of good deals because there's plenty of motivated sellers. And you can't buy a $20 share of a piece of property. So that limits the number of buyers and creates all sorts of opportunities. So real estate is the way to go, and because of the ideal strategy we believe buy and hold is also the way to go. Now there's 5 major steps in acquisition. The first one is we need to pick our criteria. What are we looking for? What areas are we trying to buy in? And then we need to find our motivated sellers. We need to find someone who has a reason to sell and has a reason to sell at a discount. Maybe they have properties in disrepair. Maybe they're being foreclosed on. Maybe it's a property they own out of state, it's not being managed particularly well. Maybe it's a bank. Banks are some of the most motivated sellers out there, and they're actually the motivated sellers that we go after the most. Banks have a reserve requirement. If they have a certain amount, if they have properties on their books that they own, that means there's money they can't lend out. And so they want to get those properties gone as soon as possible, and are willing to take major discounts for them. Then you need to analyze the deal, figure out what you want to offer, figure out what you want to buy it for, figure out what makes sense. Then you need to negotiate the price and the terms, I should add. And finally, you need to perform your due diligence. Never skimp on the due diligence. This happens a lot, and it always burns you if you do. Now, there's a key factor that needs to be thought. When you're thinking of buying and holding, you need to think of the property like, I need to buy something that I can flip if I wanted to. You need to get a good deal. Good deals are the lifeblood of your business. As I talked the other week, real estate, because of the leverage, you have so much potential for upward gain. If the property goes up 5% value and you have an 80% loan on it, you actually make 25% on your money. But at the same time, if it goes down 5%, you've lost 25% of your money. You need to have that equity built in as soon as you purchase the property. That's what protects you. That's how you make this not a risky business. If you don't have that, it is very risky, as a lot of people found in around 2006, 2007. We got hit too by that, but because we had so much equity in our properties and we got good deals and the principal was built up and all that time, over all that time, we were able to weather the storm. But there are some differences between flipping and holding. There are some differences in what you look for. Both need to be good deals, but they're not exactly the same. The first one is flipping. You generally, this is all generally, there's plenty of exceptions, but you generally want to be at a mid to higher price point. And that's because there's a bigger profit margin. And like a roof costs the same, whether it's on a house that's worth $50,000 or a house that's worth $150,000. It's the same size, generally speaking. So you want to be a little bit higher price point. There are more buyers in that area too. At lower price points, there's more renters. So you have more people to sell to. So generally when you're flipping, you want to be at a higher price point than when you're holding. When you're flipping, LTV is the number. Actually, it's ARV, I'm sorry. The after repair value. That's what you're looking for. You want to have equity. You need to have equity in the property. Otherwise, when you flip it, you won't make any money. That's really the lifeblood of someone who's flipping. With holding, the ARV is definitely important. You do not want to neglect the ARV. The most important thing is cash flow. If you have a property that doesn't cash flow but has plenty of equity, there's no reason to hold it, really. Just assuming or hoping for appreciation is not investing, it's speculating. With flipping, the property needs to glow. You really want to rehab it and make it look nice. You want a homeowner to come in there like, yes, I want to live in this house for as long as I can think, I can imagine. With a rental property, it's very easy to spend too much money. You want the property to look nice. You don't need it to look incredible. So you might put granite countertops in a house you're flipping. In a house you're holding, for Michael will do. You might put in stainless steel appliances in a house you're flipping. In a house you're holding, black or white will be fine. Tiled floors in a house you're flipping, vinyl on a house you're holding, etc. And finally, with flipping, hard money works pretty well. I mean, as long as you're quick and you're in and out, yes, there are a lot of points. Yes, it's a high interest rate. But if you got a good margin on the property, it can work. With buy and hold, the interest rate is simply too high, and it virtually never works. So hard money is good for flipping. It's not particularly good for holding. So I'm going to give you a quick case study. This is 123 9th Street versus 321 OK Street. So both these properties we're all into for 75% of their market value. This one we're in for $150,000 and it's worth $200,000. This one we're in for $60,000 and it's worth $80,000. Now you also can have some closing costs, some holding costs, some commission when you sell it. So sell for $200,000, you have $160,000 total of all those costs. You make $40,000. Do the same here. Your closing costs, commissions, all the rest is $6,000. You make only $14,000. So the flip isn't very strong. You don't make a ton of money here, even though you're probably on the same size project. Furthermore, if one thing goes wrong, let's say the HVAC goes out. You thought the HVAC was good, but it wasn't. Then you got to replace the entire system. It's another $4,000. You're down to $10,000. Here, you're down to $36,000. It's not so bad. But when you're holding, because the interest, your expenses are actually probably going to be a little bit higher on 123 9th Street, because you have higher taxes, you have higher insurance, and often nicer materials. So you actually have higher expenses. Your interest is going to be much higher. You're into this property for more than 2.5 times what you're into this property for. And rents don't go up evenly with prices. They start to slow down. I've rarely seen rents over 2,000. Usually even in Overland Park, you're looking around the mid-thousands or lower thousands. And so, whereas a property in Grandview, Raytown, Belton, those type of properties easily rent near about $800, $900, something like that. So when you take into account the rent isn't going up that much, but your mortgage is going up a lot at 9% interest, which is what we do, this property doesn't cash flow. You lose $100 a month. This property does cash flow. You make $100 a month. And it does even better once you refinance it. So you can make money in the higher end properties if you want to hold them. I'm not saying there's never a case that you can do that, but I would move more towards the middle of the market. There is one danger to holding. Don't get lazy. So you have no feedback mechanism. When you're flipping, if you sell a property and you lose money, you know you did it wrong. Your criteria was wrong, your rehab was too high, you missed something on due diligence, whatever. There are a million excuses rationalizations you'll be able to come up with when you're holding a property that will make you think, oh, it's okay. It still cash flows. It doesn't matter that I don't have any equity. Or, you know what, it's a good area, it's improving, I think it will appreciate. Or, I don't really know what that property's worth. I mean, there's a lot of comparables. I'm going to compare it to the highest end. Don't fall for this trap. You need to be very, very conservative and go and act like you're flipping. You got to think, this property needs to work as a flip. So, next we got to find our motivated sellers. We got to pick our criteria. That's the first thing. So we need the type of areas, the type of properties we want, pick exact target areas we want to market, see what price points do we want, and what rehab sites. Do we want to deal with structural issues, or do we not? We're going to pass on that at the time. Make all those decisions. So this is what we do. We look at our rent-cost ratio. Rent cost is the monthly rent divided by the total price. If a property rents for $1,000 and it's worth $100,000, that's a 1% rent-to-cost ratio. We kind of break it into pieces. So we have properties that are nicer areas that we look for in the lower ones, They still cash flow barely, but they're in nicer areas, easy to rent, more appreciation potential. Ones in the middle, we call them value plays, and then ones that are over 2%, a little bit rougher areas generally, but they cash flow very well. And generally, as I was saying, you want to be in the lower middle of the market. The middle is all right, but down here it's too tough to manage, not enough appreciation. Up here it's too expensive, and it's very difficult to make a cash flow. This is Kansas City, and this is where we have target. Those are the different areas, and those are where we invest, primarily in this horseshoe.
And what are those communities? I can't see.
Okay, I'm sorry. So we got Grandview here, and also Belton, Lee Summit. This is by the old Bannister Mall, Graytown, south part of Waldo. So Independence is up there. That right there, from the south part of Waldo down through Belton and back up to Graytown is our primary market. Now here's some tools for picking an area. The first is asking around. There's a wealth of knowledge in this room. I see this all as basically community real estate investors. Ask other investors, what are the best places to be investing? If I'm looking for this criteria, what do you recommend? Next, drive the area. See what they look like. Are there vacant houses, are there boarded up houses, burnt down houses that they haven't removed? Drive around at night. See what kind of residence you might be getting. And there are plenty of online tools. City Data has a fantastic tool. If you go on it, they have a mapping feature, and it breaks it down. You can break it down all the way down to the subdivision. So have median income for that subdivision, or vacancy rate for that subdivision. They do not have crime statistics, but you can get that from a website like CLR Search, which will compare all the different crimes in that zip code. It's zip code. So you can get an idea of what that looks like. There are plenty of sites for rental comparisons. I think Craigslist is the best. They got a map feature. Just go there and look at what your competition is charging. Just make sure to compare like to like. And then there's other sites for comparing property values. The MLS is the best, but Zillow is good too. Just don't use the Zestimate. The Zestimate is useless. Look at the comps, and also look at the dates, because they'll have some old ones too. You want to have something that's recent. Next, we need to find motivated sellers. So how to find deals, there's a bunch of ways. First one is letters. Send them out to people who are getting foreclosed on. In Jackson County, it's called an appointment. When they file an appointment, that means that the property is set to be foreclosed on. And you can find that information in the Pulse newsletter, and there's some online sources as well. But probate.
What letter?
The Pulse is the name of it.
P-U-L-S-E?
Yes. And probate, I wouldn't mail them right away. It's inconsiderate, but they do probate creates a mess, and they do want to get out of it. Out-of-state owners is another possibility. Driving for dollars. Drive around the neighborhood. Look for a house that's in disrepair. Mail the owner. Or if you're a little bold, you can knock and talk. People are driving for dollars properties, or people who are getting foreclosed on. Just be very considerate and be prepared. You're going to get a door slammed in your face. Wholesalers, a lot of wholesalers. We have bought properties from wholesalers. Some of it is you'll get some junk in your email box, but there is some good stuff too. So network with wholesalers, and they'll find some stuff. Networking just in general. I mean, we bought a house from one of our employees, so always tell people what you do and see maybe they have a house for sale. REO departments, you can call up banks and ask them to speak to their REO department. I have heard that this has gotten harder. We haven't done this for a while, but I've heard the banks aren't as interested in talking to people directly about this, but I'm not positive about that. So it's something to look into. Foreclosure auctions. They have the auctions at the courthouse steps. I will say, if you are going to do this, you need to check for tax liens. So you can do that by having a report from a title company, or actually going online and checking yourself. It's a little cumbersome, but we once bought a property with a $7,000 tax lien, and you do have to pay it. Advertising, newspaper ads, like my dad mentioned. He has that one that's paid for itself 1,000 times over. Craigslist, billboards. I don't think Craigslist or any of those other websites are particularly effective. People aren't looking for advertisements there, but there are options out there. Bandit signs. Now these are usually illegal. They're usually against city ordinances, but you will see them all over the place. Long ago we did them, and we certainly got leads off them. Now an agent or the MLS. I'll talk about this a little bit more, but the multiple listing service has all the listings. And it's the biggest source of properties out there, although there's going to be a lot of competition for those. LoopNet and CoStar if you're looking for commercial properties. That would be a good place to look. But also, if you're looking for commercial properties, you want to go straight to the brokers. You want to get on their mailing list, so go to the key brokers. Other websites, Mary has a list of properties for sale, Bigger Pockets, Truly, etc. And also, I know Eddie Speed was in here last month. You can buy notes, and you can either hold the notes, or you can actually, if they're in default, you can foreclose on them and purchase properties that way. So let's talk really quickly about letters. The first thing is you want to have different types. You don't want to just have the same thing over and over again. So first thing, send them a regular envelope. Then send them a manila envelope. Then send them a postcard. So you want to, I will say, we've been to people's houses that we had sent letters to, and they called us, and they show us the stack that they get, and it's ridiculous. And so you've got to stand out. They are going to get a lot of mail. What makes yours different? So one of the ways to make it different is to have it handwritten or handwritten. And so handwritten, like we've had our own person, like our receptionist or whatnot, just write out the address on the front, because someone's much more likely to open a letter that's been handwritten. Or you can go to like yellowletters.com or some other sources like that, which will write it out in a handwritten way. It looks handwritten, real quick glance. If you look closely, it doesn't, but more likely to get open. You want to have a call to action, call me today, something like that. A lot of these people go through the 5 stages of death and dying, or the 5 stages of getting foreclosed on. The first one's denial, and if you just send them some information, they're just going to see this information, it's probably going to go in the trash. Always include a PS. It's some marketing thing, and they've done some research, but always have a PS line. And you need to mail several times. The first time probably goes in the trash. Second time maybe they'll pin it to the refrigerator. Third time maybe they'll call you. And you want to measure your results. You want to test your results and modify it. If you send out regular envelopes and they don't do any good, maybe you should stop sending them. Just send them else, like postcards, things like that. Phil, can you pass out a copy of our letter here?
I have a question. So how do you get access to the list of the foreclosures?
Can we come back to that? Sorry. Oh, sorry. Is that all right? That's right. Yeah. Oh, actually, no. Actually, why not just say it right now? It's the next slide. So you can find the foreclosures. You can go down to the courthouse. You can also find them on Jackson County or JacksonGov.org. You go to that by going into the search. I'd have to look it up. It's not really on the top of my head, but if you call, it's a search feature. It's like the very bottom one. It's like searching documents, and then you search for all the recent appointments that have been made. But that's it. And you can also go. The polls list them all out too. But you can get the data. So you get the data. You can also get the data from like DataQuick sites like that. This would be like out-of-state owners. What are some out-of-state owners in this zip code? DataQuick will send it the data. It's not perfect. You're going to mail some people. They're going to call you. What are you calling me for? Just apologize and move on to the next one. You can also get it from mail in Kansas City, in Missouri and Kansas. You can't really get it from title companies. In Oregon, we could. They just give us all this data. In some places, you can. And when you're doing letter mailings, use your mail merge. It will make it much easier. But for example, this letter just starts out. Is the bank trying to foreclose on your house? Are you afraid your credit will be ruined and the bank will kick you out before you're ready? Do you not have any equity or feel you don't have any options? My name is Andrew Syrios. I'm a local real estate investor, and I like to help rid you of this problem. So I'm just going. I'm being honest about what I'm doing. I'm explaining. I'm saying this is a problem before you. I'm going to fix it. I have an option. I at least have an option to fix it. And so we have the long form letter, but also the short letter that is either handwritten or handwritten. So switch it up. Now, if you're going off the MLS, you need to make a lot of offers. This is what we do. This is our primary source. So we've made over 1,000 offers in the 3.5 years we've been in Kansas City, and we get about 10% of the ones we get. And we go through probably about at least for every 3 houses we go through, we probably make an offer on 2 of them because the other one's so bad or they're so ridiculously priced, there's no point. So you need to make a lot of offers. You're just looking for the creme de la creme. And as far as real estate agents, you either need to get a really great one, like we've luckily found, or at least consider becoming an agent yourself, because having access to the multiple listing services is extremely important. You can also get patent protection on it. So next we're going to analyze the deal. There are 4 major calculations that you want to use. The first one is the rent cost, which is the first one we went over. So it's the monthly rent divided by the total price. All of this stuff comes with huge asterisks. It's generally, usually, for the most part. None of it is 100%. It depends on the area. Like I said, I say, it should be usually 1.5% or more. But as I showed, like in Lee Summit, we're willing to accept 1.3, 1.2, even if it's a really good property. And it's still, we run out, it's still cash flow. So it's big asterisks, but generally speaking, you want to be above 1.5%. Real quick, there's something called the 2% rule that you may have heard of, but it's garbage. Ignore it. It's worthless. You can cash flow properties better than 2%, and you don't have to get 2%. Sometimes I think that pushes people, especially new investors, into really bad areas where properties look good on paper, but they only look good on paper. And so if you have the 2%, you're all absolute garbage, throw it away. The next one is comparable market analysis. You want to use comparable sales and compare and see what would your property look like. His property is similar to yours. Here's some properties that are similar to yours, and what were they selling for, and that should give you an idea what yours would sell for. And you want to be all in for no more than 75%, especially if you're using our model, because we have to have that 25% equity in to refinance it with a bank loan. And my dad will talk about that at the end. The next is a cap rate. This is your operating income divided by your total price. This is a very good measure for apartments, especially if you have an operating history. So you have an operating history of 12 months, assuming all the numbers are correct, and you need to check that and verify that. But if that is the case, you know pretty much what the property is bringing in. The cap rate is, and you want to be above 10 generally. It's not great for houses. And the reason is it all depends on your management. You could have a great deal, but if you have a terrible tenant, it destroys your unit, you might have $7,000 expenses that year and property and cash flow. But generally, we run it 3,000 to 4,500. Generally speaking, is what a property will cost per year average. Normally when you're not dealing with tenants who destroy your property. The last one is the most important. It's cash flow. Income minus expenses minus debt service. And we aim to be above at least 100 units positive cash flow per month, and that is with a 9% interest only loan. You need a cash flow per month, as I've said before. If it's not cash flowing, you're just hoping for appreciation, you're not investing, you're speculating.
That's based off a 100% finance.
Based off 100% financing, yes.
Can you go back to that previous screen
Yes.
real fast?
You should slow down, you're too fast.
There's so much to go through.
We said they were writing down and you're too fast.
By the way,
The last point and go off, and we can't write down the last
Okay.
point.
By the way, if you'd like, we can send copies of our slides too, if you'd like. So
It'll be
yeah.
on our website.
Oh yeah, we'll put them on our website. So go to Stewardship Properties and we'll have them there. Does everyone have a chance to write these down?
Hey, Andrew?
Yes.
The offers that you do write, are they all cash offers?
We offer cash even though we put a loan on it. But we do offer cash because some people, a lot of banks really want it to be a cash offer. So let's talk about comping out property real quick. So this is 9915 Harrison. We talked about it last week. We want to get comparable houses that are close. If possible, the same subdivision. That's perfect. But comping out is not an exact science. You want to get as close as you can. So if you can't do the same subdivision, usually within a half a mile, try to stay within a mile at least. Next one is trying to find sale comps in the last 6 months. It does you no good to compare a property to a property to a sale that was 10 years ago. It's irrelevant. So you want to be in the last 6 months, if at all possible. You want to find similar houses to compare to, and you also want to find properties of similar age. A brand new construction is going to be a lot more expensive than property that's 50 years old. So I did that. I checked this area right here for properties, and this is the list we got. What are we looking for? Well, we're looking for square footage. In Eugene, back when we were in Oregon, we would always, price per square foot was a big key here. Now, in Kansas City, the big key is usually condition of the property and the number of beds and baths. Square footage is a little bit secondary. Bathrooms, a one bathroom house is not comparable to a two bathroom house. Foreclosures, there's a huge gap, especially in Jackson, especially in Kansas City metro area, between the price that a property that's owned by a homeowner sells for and the price of the property owned by a bank. I can't remember exactly what it is, but it's over 50%. Condition, and if you have access to the MLS, or actually you can just check on Trulia, look through the pictures, or actually you can go to the property, get an idea of the condition. In addition, there's some other issues. These aren't as important, but they are noteworthy. Bedrooms, whether it has a garage and a basement. A property that has a garage and a basement is probably not comparable to a house that has neither. But if it has a garage and another house doesn't, just make an adjustment for it. The estate sale and investor sales. Investors can be a mix, but I've noticed that these generally sell for less. Estate sales are often very dated. Investors, the ones that are listed as investor sales in the MLS, they seem to be less. They sometimes only like pre-rehab sales and things like that. And finally, the style. A split is not comparable to a ranch perfectly. Sometimes you don't have much of a choice, but you need to know that they are different. So, went through it. The red ones are all their REOs, they're in bad shape. The black ones are
And where'd that printout come from?
Where'd that printout come?
Yeah.
I
Is that
put it
MLS?
together. That's from the MLS.
Were you able to search and get that?
It exported it. So I exported it into an Excel document. You set up your own criteria and export it to an Excel document. But you can also just print out their layout and then just cross them out one by one. So here's a bad comp. As you can see, it's nearby, but 2 more bedrooms, another bathroom. It's over twice the size and it was built 15 years newer. We can't use that. It's junk. Here's a good comp. It's not perfect, but it's good. Same bedrooms, same bathroom, same garage, both have a basement. This one's a little bigger, but this one has about a finished above ground basement when you walk in, because this is a raised ranch, this is a regular ranch, and that square footage is not counted. I don't know why, but it's not counted. So this one's, they're actually about the same size, really, and they're built 1 year apart. The only difference is it's a raised ranch and that's a regular ranch. But generally, they're pretty good comparable. And as a matter of fact, Harrison appraised for $105,000. So here's the mistakes to avoid. First of all, don't start in a bad area. You can make money there, they're good residents, but don't start there, you need to know it. Next, buying houses you want to live in. You want to buy a house that you would, if you had to, you would live in, but you don't want to you're not trying to buy something perfect. Or make it perfect with a rehab. Trusting a pro forma, or we call them profecas. If you get like an email from a wholesaler or something like that that says, cash cow, 25% cash on cash return, or 25% cap rate, $500 a month cash flow, this property will, cure cancer and stop global warming, feed ISIS all at the same time. It's probably worth it's not true. Performas are just estimates, and they're always estimates in the seller's favor, and especially if there's been an operating history, who cares? I mean, if they didn't get the numbers there, why are they so certain you can? So make your own estimates and only use real numbers. Buying out of state, I'm pretty against it unless you've got boots on the ground. There are some exceptions. Some people make it work, but I've seen some people lose their shirt on. Be very, very, very careful when buying out of state. And lastly, insufficient due diligence. So let's go real quickly over awards on a property. We're going back to 3210 K Street versus 123 Skid Row Alley. And so you don't buy in Skid Row Alley for only $15,000, but it actually is a bigger rehab because it's older property and it's been treated a little bit worse. So 25, you're into it, all into it for 40. Only rents for $600, and all of a sudden you realize your vacancy is 25% because oftentimes you'll have residents who stop paying you. And in Jackson County in particular, it can take a long time to evict somebody. It's an arduous process. And then you realize you destroyed your unit. So your expenses are higher, and it's more likely that will happen there. Or then you start screening really carefully and you have to go through a lot more residents. And all of a sudden your AC unit grows legs and walks off. So this property is cash flow. You're losing $1,500 a month on it, and banks don't really like lending there, and the property values are very low, so if you put any money into the rehab, you're not going to get it out. A roof costs the same place. It costs the same amount in both places. So good luck getting a refinance. The next is to negotiate the price. Now, as my dad stole from me, if you're not embarrassed by your offer, it's usually too high. It's too high. But that's only usually. It's not always the case, especially when you're dealing with banks. So this right here is a property on 7716 Walnut in the Waldo area. They were asking $32,000 for it. I thought they left off a 1 or something like that. Because the property was actually in pretty decent shape and the comps around it were all well over $100,000. absolute feeding frenzy on this property. We were the 17th offer. Actually, it's a HUD property. They don't allow investors to buy it. I was living in the basement or office at the time, so I bought it as an individual. I made an offer as an individual, and I went and actually lived there for 2 years. But we offered $23,000 over asking, and we got it. We put $25,000 into it, and it appraised for $130,000. So there are exceptions. Sometimes you got to go way over asking, especially with banks and HUD and Fannie and Freddie. With private sellers, usually you've got to go low. Now, negotiating is more of an art than a science, but I will say if there are if you can do 2 things right, you're better than 90% of negotiators out there. 90% of people out there at negotiating. The first one is ask for what you actually want, and the second one is always be willing to walk away. A lot of people are ask for what they want, maybe they're blunt, maybe they're even rude, but they get attached to it. They get attached to a deal, they need to have it. Don't ever get attached to a deal, it's just a deal. The second group of people, and I put myself more in this category, are more, they're afraid to make, to ask what they want, they're afraid to make the offer because it's so low, but at the same, so you pretty much almost walked away by default. If you can master these 2 things, I mean, there's more to do, but you're on the right track, and you're better than most. As an example of this, my father here is probably about the best I've ever seen at making ridiculous, well, other than John, of course, my apologies, at making ridiculous offers and making awkward situations that he doesn't seem to know that are awkward, so. Okay, so back in Eugene, negotiating for a house, and the seller wants $170,000, he wants to offer $160,000. And all of a sudden, but they've been building, they've been talking a lot, building rapport, and it had come out that her son needed a cell phone. She knew, she was going to buy him a cell phone. Now my dad had bought me a cell phone, and I do want to make note, this was supposed to be my cell phone. And he was like, you know what? I got the cell phone right here. Why don't I just give you the cell phone if you can come down to my price? So cell phone's worth $100. So cell phone is worth $10,000. That's what the market will bear. Awesome. Really key part with negotiating is to build rapport, and you want to first and foremost don't waste your time. If somebody's out in la la land, if the property doesn't meet your criteria, don't bother. Be polite, but get them off the phone as quickly as you can. Your time is valuable. Treat it as such. Don't start immediately with your offer. We're not cyborgs, don't act like one. Be a human being, interact with them. Chat, be genuinely interested and empathetic. If they're in a bad situation, empathize with them. And we're here to solve problems. We're not just here to make money. Be positive and upbeat. There's no reason, don't go crazy if they're really down. You don't want to be a clown or anything. But certainly, have a smile on your face, be optimistic and positive. And also, you're there to fix their problem and make it clear that that's your objective. Now, I want to talk really quickly about the power of anchoring. And this is again from Daniel Kahneman's book. There's a study where there's an ocean exploratorium, and they had some environmentally minded people there. And so they were asking them to give a monthly donation. And the first group, they said nothing. What would you give in a monthly donation? The second group, they said the average donation is $5. And the next group, they said the average donation is $400. The first group that had no anchor, they donated an average of $64. The second group that had the $5 anchor donated an average of $20. And the third group had the $400 anchor donated an average of $127. There's more than 600% difference simply because of the anchor. What an anchor is something, a number, an idea, something like that that's thrown out there and sort of sets the ballpark for the discussion. It becomes what people anchor to and think is sort of almost like the norm now. This is an important thing. They exist whether you like them or not, so you better use them to your advantage. The first one, so how do we do this? First of all, build your case first when making an offer. You throw out something ridiculous, you're going to offend them, even with the power of anchoring. So you purchase a property nearby. Okay, that price. use that. There's some comps you know about. The condition of the property, something that makes your case of why the property should be valued where you are. You also want to dress for success, so to speak. You want to look sharp, look professional. People make snap judgments about you. As soon as you walk in the room, they've made 50 different judgments about who you are as a person. And so you want to come off as being professional. You also want to be kind of respectful. It's another anchor. If you're having a bad day and you're blunt and sort of abrasive, that's who you are to them for a long time. So you always want to be kind and respectful. And sometimes, contrary to the advice that many give, you actually do want to make the first offer. And the reason for now, it's not always the case. If they throw out, there's certainly examples where you want to see where they're at and go from there, especially when you're trying to figure out whether you want to spend time on this. But if you think they're very motivated, a lot of sellers have delusions of grandeur about the property's worth. And so you can dispel that by setting an anchor close to where you want it to be. So oftentimes it actually makes sense to make the first offer, especially after you've built your case. Okay, we're going to perform due diligence.
Andrew, when you make that first offer, if you have in your mind a number that you think is the right number, then is your anchor below that?
Yes.
Okay.
That's your strike price. You always start below your strike price. So, Phil, can you hand out our initial analysis sheet? This is our initial analysis sheet. It's a one-page document. Whenever I walk through a property, I have to fill it out. It's quick and dirty. It doesn't need to be exact. We're trying to get an idea of the rehab cost. So I'm like, okay, $1,500 for appliances. We need $2,000 for paint. Kind of run down like that.
Just circulate those around, by the way, because we just have a few of them. So people can
Yeah, circulate those around. It doesn't need to be exact, but you always have to have a strike price. If you set your strike price up front at $40,000, that's where you stop. If you don't go to 41, you stop at 40. You ever wonder why the auctioneers talk like, right? It's to get people thinking, I gotta win. But you don't win by buying a bad property. You've lost. Winning is buying good properties, not buying properties. Always remember that. Once you've got the property under contract, first thing you want to do is a detailed walkthrough inspection and put together a scope of work. Now you're going to the nitty-gritties. We'll get to this more in the next presentation. But this is not down and dirty. This is thorough. You may want to hire a professional inspector. I think if you're starting out, you should definitely and go through those reports in detail. If you get to the point where you're going buying in volume and you know properties pretty well, maybe if there's some things you have questions about, bring the inspector to look at that individually. But early on, I would definitely recommend it. Specialized inspector or a specialist in that field to look at like HVAC or the roof, get a roofer out to look at the roof if you're not sure about it. Structural engineer for looking at the foundations. And one quick tip about the foundations, you can run your finger along the edge of the siding. And if it goes, it should go in about, it should go in no more than past your knuckle. If it goes in much more than that, it's about 2 inches, you need to start putting braces up. If it goes in more like 4 inches, 3 or 4 inches, it's getting close to the point where you're actually need to push the wall back. Review leases and financial information. Make sure that they match the rent roll and the operating statement. You want to look at their bank statements and actually make sure that the rents are being deposited if you're looking at property that's leased. You scope the sewer line. A lot of people miss this. If properties are older than 1980, sewer lines are often shot. They're just broken. And it can be $3,500 to $5,000 to fix that. So you want to scope and get that down. And then also, if you're buying apartments, you want to do phase one, which is an environmental. You want to learn construction costs to be able to do those, do your estimates. Some ways to do that, looking at contractor bids, and always ask for itemized. If it's not itemized, don't even bother. Always want to ask for itemized contractor bids. And go through those individually. Talking to other investors, what do you think this is worth? Or even asking an investor, can you come out here and we'll look at the property. Just give me a quick idea what you think the property is going to cost to rehab. Talking to people in construction helps too. Books and online sources. Here's a book that I'd recommend reading. It's called The Book on Estimating Rehab Costs by Jay Scott from Bigger Pockets, and that's a good place to start for getting down estimating that. Then you can also review your results. Always review your results. That can give you a better idea. Look at this. Here's another thing to know about the business. It's not, if you get a contractor bid, that's not it. Here's the contractor bid, $12,000. But a lot of contractors don't do other things. So like a lot of contractors, they don't do the HVAC, they don't do the vinyl, the roof, or the landscaping, all these things. They might, some do, but they don't necessarily. Now all of a sudden, your new total is more than twice what the contractor bid is. Well, okay, now we have our new total. Wrong. We also have a holding cost, and we need to put in a contingency. The Sydney Opera House, you know, that big building in Sydney, Australia, the crazy-looking one, is budgeted at $7 million. It costs $100 million. It always costs more and takes longer than you think. So add in a contingency. Final price is over 3 times what the contractor bid was. So now I'll open it up for any questions about how much time do we have, Phil, before we need to take a break?
About 10 or 20 minutes, so we're okay. I'll stop it.
Okay. Yeah.
When looking at properties, is there a time period for a property that you should absolutely avoid that's built in the 50 to 55? I mean, I was just curious if there's just them that are.
We don't. If there was one, it would be really old properties, like properties built before 1940 or something like that. We do buy those. We're more careful about them. We know they're going to be a larger rehab. We know like we need to look for knob and tube wiring, which is, well, you see the little knob, which is, that's going to be dangerous. Probably going to be galvanized plumbing, which is usually going to be rusted by this time and needs to be taken out. So we need to take into more considerations, but we as a company do not exclude any properties based on age.
When you're analyzing properties and you're talking about scope and sewer, stuff like that, now, are you doing that just on properties you have under contract? Do you do that in the inspection period?
Yes, in the inspection period. So
And the other thing is, I don't know if everybody's experienced this, but it isn't scoping a sewer $500-600?
$100. The guy we get does it for $100, but we do a lot. So.
$100?
Yeah, but no, you'll usually be able to get it for like 150 or 200, 150 to 200 if you call
But
around.
you do that during the inspection period?
Inspection, yeah, it's too expensive to do it on every property we get, but we want to know up front because it's much. We've had this happen before. Move in a resident, and then a week after they're there, raw sewage starts backing up, and there's no way to make a resident love you more than to have raw sewage backing up all over their bathroom. I mean, it really just it endears you to their hearts. So those kind of things can happen a lot with these older properties. If they're newer than 1980, I won't worry about it. But the older ones, yeah, scope the sewer line. And if you're in a negotiation, what better way to say, hey, oh, by the way, the sewer line's broke. I need an extra $6,000 off. So.
On pre-1978 properties, are you concerned about lead or asbestos?
We are somewhat concerned about it. Generally speaking, pretty much everything we buy is pre-1978. With regards to like asbestos usually in the ceilings or sometimes nail installation around there, we actually have luckily not had to deal with that much. We have rarely do much to the ceilings other than just paint over what's there. And we rarely, and I have not seen a lot of the asbestos wrap installation in the basements. But with regards to paint, usually we're just painting over it. But if you are getting a subcontractor or a contractor to do paint, you should make sure that they're lead-based certified and ask for that certification up front because you don't want to, DJ's not so kind about such things. But yeah, you do know that before 1978, properties often did have lead paint, and it's something to be aware of. But it's not something to be scared of. It's not the end of the world. It's definitely manageable, but just take proper precautions.
If your painter is also lead-based certified, is it important to have your people do electricity, plumbing to be licensed?
Yes, I mean, it depends on what you're talking about. If you're talking about changing out a light fixture or setting a toilet or something like that. But if you're talking about actual like rewiring a house, putting the breaker panel, or replumbing, yes, we should get licensed contractors to do that work.
Yes, on your property analysis sheet, can you talk briefly about your factors for conditions 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? What kind of examples of that?
Yeah, so it's more of a judgment call. I mean, it's just so if let's say I'm looking at let's just take this carpet in this room right here. It's in decent shape, but I don't like the fact that it's in these squares. It looks kind of ugly to me. So the fact it's in good condition, but not very pretty in my judgment. Maybe give it a 4, maybe in the middle 3.5. It is a bit of a judgment call. If a roof is brand new, it's a 5. If it's garbage, it's a 1. If I'm looking at it, okay, there's some hail damage on it. It looks like it's maybe got 5 to 7 years left. Maybe I'll give it a 2.5. thereabout. It's a bit of a judgment call, but I'm just trying to remind myself when looking over this, what kind of condition is the property in? If it's in just sparkling condition, it'll be 5 and 4 on the lot. And we don't buy any of those, by the way. Does that answer your question, Mark? Okay.
When you're writing your offers, they're all cash, they'll ask for proof of funds. So the proof of funds that you're providing, I presume, is off of your own operating account.
Yes.
Right? Now, if you were a new investor and you don't happen to have, a big dollar figure in an operating account, then, I presume that now you're writing a finance offer, right? Your hit rate is going to be a lot lower.
I want to say it's a lot lower. I don't think most sellers are so obsessed with cash only. What will happen there is you have an offer that's, let's say it's 40,000, you're at 40,000, and you're cash only, and the other guy's at 41.5, and he's financing. Maybe they'll take the 40,000 instead of 41.5. You're not. I don't think you're ever out of the game if you're asking for financing, especially if you have like a private lender or if you have like a pre-qualified lender, private lenders want to lend you money, or like we did that on Walnut, didn't we? Yeah. So on Walnut, I don't have the money personally to buy that house, and I was buying that one individually. So Stewardship Investments lent me the money. So we provided basically a bank statement from Stewardship Investments and a letter saying Stewardship Investments is lending the money to me, which is what we did. So yeah, it's not. It doesn't take you out. Don't worry about it. You might miss one or two because of it, especially when you're going after MLS properties. But it's not the end of the world.
Do you rely on cap rates as much for multifamilies, duplex, triplex, fourplex? You talked about apartments, but what about those smaller units?
I would say for a duplex, no. For a fourplex, not really. I mean, actually, let me put it this way. A lot of it depends on when the property is released. If the property has an operating history, and I can look at that, that's really important. That will give me, okay, this is what the cap rate is. This is what they were able to get out of it, especially if they have a lot of data. But the duplex, no, it's still not enough. Fourplex probably is where I'd start. The property hasn't at least. I do put together a cap rate in my own mind, but it's sort of, I just say fourplex is where I start to, I look at both evenly. And then once it goes above fourplex, I start to look at cap rate more so than rent to cost or even cash flow, because they're very tied together.
Do you invest east of Truist area?
A little bit. We invest. Our office is on Truist. I don't think the area between Truist and Paseo is that bad. I think it's actually pretty solid. I think it's a little underrated. There's pretty nice houses there actually. So we do buy there. For the most part, we don't buy much east of Truist, other than in that area. If we found a particular deal, it might be an exception, but not a lot. I do know people who do and do well, but we don't.
Yeah, you may have already said this, but when you're doing your comparables, where do you get your sales data?
The MLS. MLS is the best place to get it. But you can go through Zillow or whatnot. Just remember, don't use the Zestimate, and look at the date, and also look at the because they don't break it down like the MLS does. And so the date's going to be much older, or perhaps, or the property's going to be very different. So you need to make sure you're comparing like to like, or as close as you can get it.
What's the best way for kind of a startup investor to get access to the MLS?
The best way, there's a couple. One is if you get a good real estate agent, they can do the work for you and get you what you need. The second is become an agent yourself, and it's something to definitely consider. It's a lot of hours. I can't remember exactly. Does anyone know? Anyone agents here? How many hours is it right now?
44 hours, and then you take the test.
Yeah. So it's not the end of the world. You become an agent yourself. There are a couple disclosures you have to do, like when you're dealing with a private seller, you have to tell them you're a real estate agent. It's not the end of the world. There's some continuing education stuff, and you got to hang your license with the principal, and they're going to take something out of your commissions. But at the same time, and they're going to charge you a little bit, usually like a desk fee. But generally speaking, I mean, you'll save that by getting the commissions if you're buying off the MLS, but getting your side of it. And so I would say either get a really good real estate agent who will do that work for you, or at least, or become an agent yourself.
Back to that cash flow, $100 per house at 100% financed. Are you also including vacancy and maintenance and management fee?
Let me see if I can look back. This slide's pretty far back. Yeah, I know I kind of went over it quickly, but we factor in a 10% vacancy, unless it's in a really good area, then we'll do 5, or if it's in a rough area, we might do 15. But we do a 10% vacancy factor usually. We're looking at $3,000 to $4,500 in expenses. I base that off of, this is a guesstimate when we're looking at it, but we base that off of either how expensive the property was, whether it's a bad area or a decent area, and also, those two. And so based, the size of the property too. And then we look at, then we just set the debt service to be 9% interest only, fully financed, and then does cash flow, does not cash flow.
Do you buy the Warzone area?
Where's that?
Do you buy the Warzone area?
Waldo?
Warzone.
Warzone. Oh, we have. We have bought in areas that, like when we first came out to Kansas City, we bought some properties in apartment complexes. The areas looked very good, but we just weren't. We were taking the ideas, as my dad said, that we moved from campus rentals to some rougher spots. And it was, we didn't explicitly think that, we were not that stupid, but we did, but we did kind of implicitly take those ideas over. And, I mean, again, you can make money, and there are plenty of good residents in rough areas. It's just, you've got to know it and specialize in it. You probably got to know Section 8 pretty well. You've got to be pretty firm, and you've got to be extremely diligent with your screening and careful, but you can make money. But we don't specialize that. We've really niched on working class, lower middle class, and middle class. That's where we that's where we figured out here.
One more question.
One more question.
When you're comping out, and all the houses in your area are foreclosed or short sales, what's your strategy on comping that house?
That is a very good question. That is tough. Because we don't want to use, we're comparing to the property that it will be. So we got a foreclosure we're buying, comparing to a property, what we're going to turn it into, right? So if everything's foreclosure, let's say you're in the Ruskin area, and like everything is foreclosure there. A couple things to know. First of all, there is no homeowner market there. So there are other ways to sell it. You can sell with a lease option. A lot of people do that. You can sell, there's a lot of people who sell like these operators who will sell like out-of-state investors. I'm against that thing kind of idea for the most part. But there are good operators who do it right. But there's also, we've seen people get taken advantage of. But selling them to kind of out-of-state, even out-of-country investors, or lease optioning them, or seller financing, those are generally how those properties are sold, or they're wholesaled out to other investors. If there's no homeowner comps nearby, that tells you something important about the property. There is no homeowner market right now. And like the Ruskin area, there's no homeowner market there. You're selling to other investors. And the investors are looking for the cheap properties, and they're going to be the foreclosures, generally speaking. So if you're going to sell to a homeowner, you probably will need to do something more creative, like a lease option or self-financing.